The Athletic has just released the full list of the best under 23 players in the NHL, and a lot of Habs made it, and a lot of Habs were ranked a lot lower than we think they should be. But before we get into that, Habs prospect Emil Heineman had an amazing quote showing off his killer confidence, so we'll be getting into all of that on this edition of Habs Digest. Jesse, we're opening here with this amazing Emil Heineman quote. So, Emil Heineman, you probably should know his name at this point if you watch the channel, but Emil Heineman's a Habs prospect. He's 21 years old, played a handful of games, 11 games with the Laval Rocket last year, scored 7 goals in those 11 games, and I believe had something like a 5 or 6 game goal streak. He was on fire in Laval last year. And so this year, he was asked a question, just I think yesterday, hey, do you think you have what it takes to get a full-time job with the Habs this year? And his answer was simple. In French, oui, tu verras en octobre. In English, yeah, you'll see in October. And, oh boy, that got me more excited for Emil Heineman than I already was. And I know a lot of analysts are saying, he doesn't project to crack the Habs lineup. But with confidence like that, Jesse, I mean, you got to start to wonder, maybe he does have what it takes.
Shots fired, definitely sending out a message to all those others that he'll be competing against. And it's a pretty solid list, right? That's why this is a bold statement, is he's going to have a lot of competition coming up against him this September, this October, right? But I think absolutely he does have a chance to make this lineup. He's totally right in making this assertion right now. He knows that the Habs, they need a little bit more of those shooting threats. They need those scoring options on, obviously, probably the third or fourth line. If he's lucky to kind of get on the Habs, this is where he'll be. And I think he could really kind of slide in nicely. He's got some good size, and I've been low-key kind of big on him, because I knew that Kent Hughes was big on him as well. So I said, okay, let me pay attention to this guy. And just every time we've seen him, even from training camp last year until he got injured, he was having an amazing showing then, right? So you got to feel like he's confident coming into this training camp this season, right? I think he offers something that we really need. And I think he's an important prospect to definitely keep an eye on.
Yeah, he kind of jumped a little bit out of nowhere. He came over from Europe and started playing in Laval, and you're like, oh, this guy got a nice shot. Oh, wow, a rocket of a shot. He's like their top power play option. Just kept showing up and showing up and showing up even more and more and more. And you've got to wonder if that trend's going to continue into training camp. I mean, the Habs, a team that's desperate to improve on the power play, if he shows out in training camp and says, look, I'm a serious power play threat, there might be a spot for him after all. But Jesse, Emil Heineman's one prospect that's not going to show up on this next segment of the video. But yeah, these final under 23 rankings, I think they leave a lot of us confused. So what we're going to do here, there was a lot of Habs on this list. There were 5 Habs in the top 51. There were 3 in the top 25. Only the Habs and Ducks had 3 players in the top 25. But we're going to open with some of the lower ranked Habs. He only ranked, I think, 150 players. And here are 3 of the lowest Habs. I mean, Owen Beck and Sean Farrell were below this. That also made this list. But this is just, we saw this when he released his list for Montreal, Jesse. But to see this in the grand scheme of things, Lane Hutson at 127th overall, below the likes of Justin Barrett and even Alex Newhook, who I think is a bit low, all placed into that middle of the lineup player tier. And that's what he projects them to be. We've talked a lot about Lane Hutson disrespect. And we know, Corey Pronman really doesn't like short players. But again, just to rehash this, I just don't see a world where Hutson, how you can possibly rank him in below 100th of all under 23 players just based on what he's shown offensively.
No, absolutely. And it seemed like kind of every player that was a little bit shorter on this list, whether it's Logan Stankoven and others, they were getting listed, much lower than they really should. These are the type of players I think are actually going to have amazing NHL careers. And even to have Lane Hutson ranked below Justin Barron, I think a lot of us as Habs fans, we think that Justin Barron can have a really good future, can be kind of a middle pairing defenseman, but Lane Hutson obviously has the potential to be such a better player. So he's almost listing these players basically by height at this point. So, that's the only real issue with it there. But no, I think Lane Hutson, once you kind of get him with a head full of speed, he's going to be really hard to stop at the NHL level. And we're seeing so on and so much more that, with defenders, just that physical play, hitting all the best offensive producers, they're not really laying the body as much, which is obviously Lane has, the quickness to kind of disrupt those plays. So yeah, no, I definitely feel with everything that he's shown, he's done so much historic seasons, and to really get rated this low, I find he's going to have better careers than even players like Alexis Lafreniere, who might end up having an okay career, I think Lane Hutson will be way better than that. And obviously these are players still ranked, much higher than Lane Hutson on this list. So definitely criminally low.
Yeah, I feel like maybe it's a boom or bust thing. Maybe he sees Lane Hutson as, at worst, not an NHL player, at best, a top pairing guy, and so he ranked him as a middle of the lineup player. Maybe that's it, but again, like you said, there's a theme of shorter players getting ranked way lower, like Dustin Wolf, who was literally the best goaltender in the AHL this year at the age of, 19, maybe 20, something like that, super young, was ranked below someone like Mads Søgaard, who at no stage in his professional career has even had a .900 save percentage. But Dustin Wolf is below average height at 6 feet, and Søgaard's above average at 6'7". So anyway, without getting too much into that, let's move on to the next set of Habs, and we're around the top 50 here. So in the bubble top and middle of the lineup player, as in like these guys could have potential to be at the top of the lineup, but they're probably going to be a middle of the lineup guy. We have Kirby, Dach, and Kaiden Guhle. Now, Jesse, Kaiden Guhle there, I think that's pretty fair. I mean, realistically, I don't think these are insane rankings, but Kirby Dach was below a player that I wanted to mention, and that's Shane Pinto. Shane Pinto is a couple of months older than Kirby Dach. Shane Pinto on a much more offensive team had 35 points in 80 games, while a younger Kirby Dach on this Habs team that struggled to score at times had 38 points in 58 games. So again, there's some weird inconsistencies here, but overall, what do you think about Kirby and Kaiden Guhle kind of rounding out the top 50?
It's not a terrible assessment, and he kind of puts it that, Dach can either probably projects to either be a wing or kind of a center in the future, probably ends up kind of being a 2C. I think some evaluations, like you said, are still pretty fair. When kind of reading this as well, and I'm talking about obviously Kirby's size and then his skating ability, obviously that's such a great combination, and just his ability to get to the front of the net. And then as we talked in last video, just what he really needs to improve off is just that finishing, right? So he's improving on his shot, which is probably just the one part of his game that's trailing, but obviously has amazing puck skills as well. And you have to think, just a big guy that can skate. Obviously, this might be a really good teammate and line mate for Juraj Slafkovsky in the future.
Yeah, and speaking of Juraj Slafkovsky, we got to get into this. The top three Habs ranked, again, the Habs one of only two teams to have three prospects under 23 years old to be listed in the top 25, the Ducks being the other team, of course. And here we go. Cole Caufield ranked at number 11 of all under 23 players in the NHL. He has him in the NHL All-Star tier. And tier 5, the bubble NHL All-Star, top of the lineup guy is Juraj Slafkovsky. As you can see, another tall guy ranked higher than probably some other analysts would do. That's just Corey Pronman's thing. And then in tier 6, top of the lineup player, you have David Reinbacher rounding out the top 25. And Reinbacher, actually, Jesse, let's start with him. He was actually ranked the highest of anyone in his draft class that was available to Montreal at the number 5 pick, outside of Matvei Michkov. He has Michkov in like one of the highest tiers, but Carlson, Fantilli, and Will Smith were all above Reinbacher, and they were the only ones, other than Mitch and Bedard, of course. So he thinks the Habs made a good pick in Reinbacher. Rounding out the top 25, I think that's not bad. But the thing is, I think all these guys, except Slav is pretty good, but I think Reinbacher and Caufield can get bumped up. Like, I think Reinbacher could be in that bubble NHL All-Star tier, because I really see him as a future All-Star. And I don't see how you don't have Caufield at least in the bubble elite tier. How does he not have potential to be an elite NHL player?
It's honestly, I think you're bang on with that assessment. I think the only thing that kind of puts him on the bubble again is kind of the size, right? But he's proving that he can still score at this level. I think he absolutely will. And just to kind of further that point, I do believe that he is above people like Beniers, even though it's kind of apples to oranges in a lot of ways. Cousins, I would kind of have a more linked, at kind of more of that bubble all-star kind of potential. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting because here's kind of my thought process, right? You have Trevor Zegras in the bubble elite tier above Caufield. And while, I can understand why you might do that, at the same time, to me, someone like a Caufield and someone like a Matt Boldy, who is in the same tier as Caufield, I don't see how you can have them. Look, I understand people have their different rating systems. For me personally, I would have Caufield, Zegras, and Boldy all in the same tier, and I would have them all in bubble elite players. I just think they've all shown enough to show that they are almost certainly going to be all-stars for a long time, but they all have that potential to take that next step and be elite. Do you agree with that? Do you kind of think you can shift a few of these guys up a notch?
No, absolutely. I think, we kind of feel the same way about a lot of these players. Like, for me, Cole Caufield, he is definitely going to be an NHL All-Star, but I think once you start getting into that 40, that 50 goal range, which I think Cole Caufield has absolutely shown the potential. This isn't just hyperbole. This isn't conjecture at this point.
Mm-hmm.
This is what he was
Facts.
on track to do. That's right. Straight facts, you know, from last year, right? So that's when you're getting to be elite NHL talent, right? You know, so I absolutely do believe that. I think he's going to get so much more respect, you know, with this season to come. I think that, you know, after this, people are definitely going to be changing their tune on Cole Caufield. That's for sure.
Let's hope he can prove all the haters wrong. I can't wait to see him in that brand new shoulder. It's going to be exciting. But that'll do it for this news edition of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 10,000 subs. And if you're still here at the very end, we really appreciate you. I'm Josh Gosse for my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.